Well, good morning. So I hope everyone's having a good weekend, and welcome back, those of you who tuned in last week. So, I've got a project I'm excited about today, but before we get started, I just wanted to take a minute to talk about the I Look Like an Engineer hashtag that was up on my trailer this morning. I grabbed a bunch of photos off of Twitter last night. If you haven't been following that hashtag over the last year, last week was the 1 year anniversary of it, and I have a link down in the corner of the screen where you can read the Medium blog post of the woman who kind of kicked it off last year and her reflections on the past year. If you haven't been following it, basically the software engineer in San Francisco was in an ad campaign for recruiting for her company, and a bunch of people were complaining that the company had hired models because she looked too attractive, I guess, for a developer. And she sent off a tweet last year ago that kind of kicked off the movement of, in particular, female software developers, but any software developer that maybe doesn't fit the traditional stereotype. Just empowering those people to put themselves out there and to find a way to feel included in the software development community. So that's something I really care a lot about and am hoping to include as part of the Elm community, as Elm is starting to grow as a language, to make sure we're inclusive and diverse. So anyway, I just wanted to give a little backstory of that since I had it up during the intro. And if you want to find out more, just search for the hashtag online or follow the link that's in the corner of the screen. So let's dive into this today. So here's my plan. I've been taking some photos over the summer, and I wanted to learn a bit more about using drag and drop in Elm 0.17. So I'm going to be trying to make a photo editor, or not, I guess not the photo editing, but doing the layout. And I want to be able to, I guess, set up some frames and be able to put photos into different frames and resize them and kind of drag the frames around. If you've used Instagram's photo layout editor, you might be familiar with that. But I wanted to try to do that in Elm today. And also, if there's time, I would like to use an image search API to kind of have an image selector that you can search and find images to put into your layout. So with that, I guess I'm going to get started. And let's see. If you look in the very bottom right, there's a link to a gist, which I have cloned here. And once I start committing stuff, you can go to that gist URL in the very bottom right and copy and clone the code. Let me pop this up. And I guess while I'm getting started, I'm curious to hear from everybody in the chat, maybe where you're watching from, what your interest in Elm is, and I'm happy to take questions throughout the stream later today. But I'm always curious to see who's watching and what they're up to. If you have your own Elm projects you've been working on, feel free to share those in the chat as well. So let's get started. I will install the dependencies with Elm make. Oh yeah, and I'm going to try to keep an eye on my network connection, because my Wi-Fi occasionally goes out and the stream might drop off. So if you notice that, please let me know in the chat too, but I will try to pay attention and restart it as soon as possible if that happens. Alright, so let's kick this off with a main.elm file. So we're going to be using HTTP requests, so I want to start using not the beginner program this time like I have in the past, but the full html.app.program. And I usually just type it here. Oh, let's see. I also want to turn on my Elm linting. Oh, do I not have it installed on this computer? Okay. Well, I'll worry about that later. So let's start up Elm Reactor. Oh, sure. The font size. There we go. Let's see. Is that big enough? And let's see. I'm going to go to localhost 8000 and go to my main. Okay, sorry, the errors are going to be kind of tiny on this secondary screen. Oh. Hey, Honky McDermott from Chicago, welcome. Let's see, I did try out setting up this other scene where I've got a giant window, but I'm not going to be able to switch back and forth too much. Okay, so we need, for our full program, we need an init, we need our subscriptions, we need update, and our view function. So let's get those going. So we're going to have init, and let's define, I like to make a type alias for the model and just set it as unit to start with, and we can change it more easily later. So to start out with, we're going to have initial model and no commands. Whoops, commands.none. We'll have initial model is a model, and initial model equals unit for now. We'll fill in some real data as soon as we get this up and going. Let's see. Typoing like crazy. Now we need subscriptions. That's going to be none for the moment. Then we need our update function. Update is a function from message, which we need to define. Type message equals nothing yet. We haven't defined anything, but we'll get to that soon. So update is a function that takes a message and a model and returns, in our advanced program, a model and commands that can result in messages when the command finishes. And for now, we'll just have command.none. Let's try this out. Okay, and finally we need our view function. And that's a function that takes a model and returns HTML that can produce messages. And we need to import HTML. And for now, let's just toString our model. And that'll be enough to get us started. All right, what did I mess up here? It's expecting model to sub A. Oh, right, my subscriptions needs to be a function. So let me just put an anonymous function there and ignore the argument. All right, so we're off to the races. Okay, so let's see. Let me start a to-do list of what we want to accomplish. So first I'd like to be able to show an image. Then I'd like to be able to show two images. Then I want to be able to resize like move the divider between the two images, if that makes sense. Move the divider between two images, and Then I'll want to be able to pan around, or like move images in their frames. And then later we'll want to do an image search to add images. Okay, that looks like a good to-do list. So let's start with showing an image. Hey, AbbyXS. Reading screen names in chat is the hardest thing. Okay, so showing an image. So that's going to deal with the view. Actually, I kind of like for debugging to leave the toString of the model in there just so we can see it if anything gets weird. So I'm going to start by keeping that in here, and I also like to put an HR. And let me move this down just a little bit. There we go. Okay, so in our to-do, let's call this view canvas. And view canvas is not a function yet, but it's going to produce HTML, or it's going to be HTML. And there's our to-do. Okay, so let's start building this out. I'm just going to use some inline CSS, and let's start with this being a square. So let's make a div, and we'll say image goes here. Then we're going to put some styles in here. Attributes dot style, and we'll need to import that. Import HTML.attributes. Okay. Then we are going to have width be 250 pixels. Height will also be 250 pixels, and let's put a border on here. 1px solid black. Alright, so here's our div. Let's also put some padding around this whole thing. Padding 8 pixels. There we go. And I guess this is kind of small in the video preview, so let's make this 2 pixel border. There we go. Alright, now let's stick our image in here. We'll use an HTML image and HTML attributes.source, and then we need an image URL. So let's go to this site that I'm going to be using later for the image search API. It's called Pixabay, and they have a big library of CC0 licensed images, which CC0 is a Creative Commons license, which is similar to public domain. So these are all nicely licensed images we can use. Let's see. Someone in the chat is mentioning there's a lot of noise today. Let's see. I'm assuming it's the fan from my laptop. Let me move my mic over here. Let me know if the audio is any better with the mic over there on the side. It looks like it might be. Okay, cool. So, let's just grab an image. Oh, that was not what I was expecting. kind of some unfortunate... Oh, I spelled beetle wrong. There we go. Let's grab this one to start with. Now, okay. Grab the image here, copy image address. Cool. Let's use that one for the moment. Cool. Okay, we've got our image. Now, this is going to be a bit of a trick in CSS, is to make this image fit into the particularly sized frame that we want. But let's give it a try. And actually, while we're at this, let's see. So we're going to need some styles on this image. And yes, we will put the width. Sure, yeah, someone's suggesting width 100%. That will work in this case because the image is wider than it is tall. So we'll have to add some logic later to check. But actually for now, I'm just going to put these same values in. We're going to be parameterizing the height and width later, so I don't feel too bad about duplicating these here because they're both going to come from variables quite shortly. Ah, right. So we want to not do the height. There we go. Actually, what we want is the height set for this one, and let the width. And then we want to crop it. Let's see. So why don't we actually put this on as a background image in the div? That might give us some more control over this. Actually, okay, I want to keep these as separate images. So we'll have our div, we'll have our style, and we will have background image is URL of that. See how that looks. Okay, and then background size is going to be, we want the width to be auto and the height to be 250 pixels. There we go. Okay, that'll start us off for now, and later I want to add the ability for us to like drag this around and reposition it within the frame. Cool. So let's see where we're at. Did we show an image? I think we showed an image, so let me commit this then. Space. Okay, so let's make our git ignore. Elm stuff goes in the git ignore. And everything else we can add, I think. Show a single image. Okay. So that's pushed up. So if you go to the link in the very far right corner of the video, assuming it's large enough to read, you should be able to follow along the gist and copy any of the code if you want it. All right. So let's show two images. And also let's maybe think about how we want to refactor this. So here's the goal. I want to be able to divide any of these areas into frames, either vertically or horizontally. And we'll just start with one. But then within each of those subframes, those potentially can be divided as well. So I'd like to set up a data structure for this that lets us represent that, and maybe we won't have UI to like expose every possible combination that we may want to build, but I'd like to be able to represent it in the data structure at least. So let's start by taking a look if we need to refactor anything, and keeping in mind that goal of how we want to model the data. So what do we have? We have our top level view, and we have the view for the entire canvas. Everything's hard-coded. So why don't we extract some variables here? Let's make a type called size, which is going to have a width, which is an int, and a height, which is also an int. Let's make viewCanvas be a function that takes a size, and then we can parameterize these values. So this will be size, and then here we'll have toString size.width plus px, and here we'll have toString size.height plus px. And let's also stick the size that we're working on in our top level model. So let's set it up like this. So in our init, we're going to have canvas, and let's change this just for the moment so we can see something change. Let's see, maybe 300. Okay. And we didn't pass our parameters to viewCanvas. So model.canvas should be the size. Cool, so it's now 100 by 300. Great. So let's put this back to 250 by 250 now that we have proven that it works. Great. And we're also hard coding things here, but this actually I want to extract into a new function. And this function will be responsible for drawing, I guess, either the single element or the split view frame that we're going to deal with in a moment. So let's call this view frame. And to start with, it's just HTML. But we're going to need two things, I think. We have the size that this thing needs to fill into, and then we also have the URL. So let's extract both those things. So this is going to take a size, and I'd also want it to take, I guess we'll call it a frame. And let's define what that means. The type frame is, for now, going to be a single image. And in that case, it will have a string, which is a URL. So, and I guess the reason I'm setting this up as a union type is because I'm going to want here to add the other, like the vertical split and the horizontal split as different possibilities for what we might be rendering in a frame. So that might be a bit of a jump, but I kind of know where I want to head with this. So now we have size and we have our frame. So since we have this data structure, or this new data type, we're going to have to destructure it. Oh, actually, now that I think of it, we can use a record type here. Okay, so we're going to take our view and our frame, and we're going to destructure the frame. So if we have a single image, which comes with a URL, then we're going to do this. And let's use our URL in here. So a lot of string concatenation. Great. Then just save this for a moment. We also want to use our size. So in this case, the height of it, I think actually we want the width too in this case. So this is toString of size.width plus plus pixel. This one is toString of size.height plus plus pixel. And then this one is where we'll need some logic in the future. But for now, this is also toString size.height, which again is only going to work if the image is wider than it is tall. But that's the case that we have for now. All right, what did I mess up? So here in the div, where is this? Line 39. Go there. View frame. All right, I didn't pass any parameters. So the size is going to be the same size as the canvas for the moment. And the frame, let's also pass that in here. So this, I'll call it the root frame here because it's the top level thing. Root frame. All right, now what's messed up? First element has type frame to message. Okay, I forgot to pass the frame to the canvas in the view. So I also want to put that in the model. Let's go up here and add a frame. And then we'll need to create one to start with. And this one is that. And then do I still have that copied? I do. Great. And then I can delete this comment. Cool. So that, they don't like me hot linking. Okay. I am gonna save this image then. And go to Imager. And we should be able to upload this quick, right? Okay. And they should let us hot link, I think. Whoops. A copy. Oh, did they not let us hot link anywhere either? Oh, there we go. Okay. So let's take that. There we go. Okay. So, we just did a refactoring, and we didn't make progress towards showing two images yet, but I think we're in a better place. So, let's see. Oh yeah, I wanted to refactor this a little bit. So this frames, these data structures, I want to put up at the top. And what else? Size, I want to move that up to the top also. And once we have a bit more built, I'll worry about separating this module into separate modules. Make sure this is good, looks good, and let's commit this. So we added our frame and size types, initialized those at the top level model. We added parameters to our view functions and extracted the view frame function, and also added this image constructor type. Refactor showing a single image. All right, so that's pushed up. Okay, So now let's do a horizontal split, because you can't see my mouse when it's over the preview of the app, but I want to divide this horizontally so there'll be a top half and a bottom half, and each one of those will contain a different image. So to do that, that's going to be a new type of frame. So let's call this a horizontal split, and this is going to have a top, which I guess is going to be a URL for the moment, and a bottom, which will also be a URL to show. So now if we compile, it's going to complain that we don't handle that case. Let's go handle it. So in our viewFrame function, in the case of a horizontal split, we're going to have a top and a bottom. And we'll need to make a div to contain them both. And there will be two children. And those children will basically be like this. Probably want to extract a function here in a moment. So the first one is going to take the top URL, and the second one will take the bottom URL. And let's set this up so we can see it as we continue to play with it. So let's change our initial model. Instead of taking a single image, let's show a horizontal split where the top is this image that we had, and the bottom, let's go find another image. Tomatoes. Ladybugs like tomatoes. Here we go. Let's grab this one. Okay, and I am gonna download this again since Pixabay doesn't like hot linking. And go to Imager. New one. Upload this. And should be this. No, okay. There's the real URL. .jpg. Great. Okay, and that's our bottom image. Okay. Let's see how this works. Cool. So we've got them both, but we need to size them correctly. So rather than being the full height, it should be over 2. And same thing here. And is that going to complain about, yeah, floats? Okay. We do have integer division, right, in Elm? There we go. Cool. So we've shown 2 images, but before we check this off on the to-do list, I want to make this a little bit more flexible. First of all, I want to have a value in here that specifies how big the split is, because that's what we're going to be changing as we drag and drop and resize things in a moment. So for now, let's put 80 in there and make it small. Then that still compiles, so now we want to use that. So when we, in our view frame, we tell what to do for the horizontal split, we'll also destructure the top height. And top height will be that value. or excuse me, the height of the top one will be the top height, and the height of the bottom one will be size.height minus the height of the top one. Okay, that looks pretty good. So let's do one more thing before I commit. And actually, this is going to be kind of the powerful part. So right now we're defining our frame as it can be a single image, or it can be a horizontal split of two image strings. Rather than letting these be strings, let's just generalize this and allow both the top and bottom to both be other frames. So now we can nest all the different frames inside of each other recursively, and if we can correctly refactor our view function, we should be able to handle rendering that all for free. So let's see. So here on line 81, top is no longer a URL. Right. So here's what we want to do. Rather than rendering these divs, rather than rendering the top and bottom as images, we are just going to call the viewFrame function again, passing the child frame. And we've got to define the size. So in this case, the size for the top portion is going to have a width that's the same, and a height is going to be top height. And then the frame we're going to pass is the top one. Let's see if that works so far. It doesn't quite. Horizontal split on line 32. Let me make this window a little bigger. So on line 32, oh, right. So in my init function, I need to update these to be frames. So in the top, we're going to have a single image whose URL is that. On the bottom, we'll do the same thing. Single image whose URL is the tomatoes. Cool. So we've got the top part rendering. Let's also view bottom. So the width of the bottom is also going to be the same width. And the height is, as we said before, going to be the height of this entire frame minus the height of the top child. And I'm just going to split these. Cool. That looks great. So I am happy saying we've successfully rendered this. Although, as I noted before, the logic is not completely correct. We've got two beetles because in this case, since I guess it's if the aspect ratio of the frame is less than the aspect ratio of the image, then we need to set auto width. Otherwise, we need to set auto height. Anyway, let's commit where this is at. So we can now show two images, and I'm pretty happy with how we've modeled it as well. We have this data type that's recursive, and every time we have a split, we could potentially put other splits inside of there. So we can show two images. We can move the divider. That's the next task. So yeah, that's what I'd like to do next. But first, I need to take a short break and get some more water. So Yeah, if you have any questions on what I've done so far, go ahead and type those in the chat at the moment. I'm going to take a short break and we will be back in 2 or 3 minutes.